Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, September 26, 2025. The cost of the federal income tax system to the economy. The Trump administration continues to examine government agencies, seeking ways to improve their efficiency and ensuring that they're doing their stated duties. We hope the Trump administration has reviewed this study done by the Tax Foundation about the compliance and other costs of the Internal Revenue Service. Here are some of their conclusions. We paid $4.9 trillion in federal taxes that consumes 17% of U.S. domestic product. In 2023, Americans filed 271.5 million tax returns. Of these, nearly 71%, or 192.3 million, were individual and corporate income tax returns, while another 36.3 million were employment tax returns. According to the White House Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, Americans will spend more than 7.9 billion hours complying with IRS tax filing and reporting requirements in 2024. Now, this is equal to 3.8 million full-time workers doing nothing but tax return paperwork. That's roughly equal to the population of Los Angeles and nearly 46 times the workforce of the IRS. Now, assuming a reasonable hourly wage, those 7.9 billion hours that Americans spend complying with the tax code cost the economy roughly $413 billion in lost productivity. In addition, the IRS estimates that Americans spend roughly $133 billion annually in out-of-pocket costs to comply with the tax code. This brings the total compliance cost to $546 billion, or nearly 2% of GDP. OIRA estimates show that taxpayer compliance now comprises 66% of the 12 billion total hours Americans spend complying with federal paperwork and 72% of the $184 billion in government-wide out-of-pocket costs for regulations. The forms required by pass-through businesses, such as S corporations and LLCs, to receive the 20% deduction for qualified business income cost those taxpayers over $19 billion. While many pass-through businesses are individually owned, we've applied the higher accounting wage to this calculation because of its complexity. The income tax returns for estates and trusts impose a burden cost of $20.2 billion per year. To put this in context, the Office of Management and Budget estimates estate and gift tax revenues will total $29 billion this year, which means that the tax costs taxpayers nearly as much to comply with as it raises in revenue. In conclusion, if there was no alternative to the irrational and unfair income payroll tax system that creates such a cost to each of us, we just have to tolerate it for the good of the country. However, there is an alternative, the fair tax, a national retail sales tax on new retail goods and retail services. The fair tax provides a family credit so that all purchases up to the poverty level for each family are not taxed and there is no withholding from your paycheck. When the fair tax is passed, it's estimated that compliance costs and regulatory burdens will be reduced by 80 to 90%. Now, except for retailers, none of us will ever have to report our income to the government again. None of us will have to report what we spent to the government, and none of us will ever have to worry about the IRS questioning our return and demanding additional tax, penalties, and interest. And also, none of us will spend any time keeping receipts, and none of us will recall April 15th in a few years as tax day. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and that returns freedom to the American people. It's imperative, though, that we don't replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elite. We must let Congress and the President know that the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the fair tax. Now, make no mistake about it. The fair tax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It will strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the fair tax will be fierce and unrelenting, and don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well, so that no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information about the fair tax to President Trump, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing, or actually investing, $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.